season. Terry McLaurin signed and delivered to the Washington Commanders, and the Eagles swing a trade for another quarterback. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. The next time a game happens, it will be the regular season kicking off September 4th, Thursday night. We've got cut down day tomorrow, and we've got some moves today to talk about. Some moves coming, no doubt, later this week as teams waive guys, and there'll probably be some more trades and hopefully some more signings and get some of these stars into their teams over the course of the next week. Fantasy draft week for a lot of folks out there as well. So Matt Williamson's fantasy football rankings for 2025 as well. We're doing quarterbacks a little bit later on today's show. So thanks everybody for tuning in, whether you are an everydayer or brand new to the show. Please consider subscribing. And if you're a regular listener, you're not already subscribed, what are we doing here? So pause right now, hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. And Matt, let's start with Terry McLaurin. They've got it figured out. We had an idea that this would get done. So big news for the Washington Commanders to get the number one receiver for their young quarterback in the building and ready to go. Terry McLaurin has agreed to a 3-year contract extension worth over $96 million with the Commanders. So this puts him in a category of star wide receiver money. It's about even with what A.J. Brown is currently making. It puts him less than only Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, DK Metcalf, and the recently signed Garrett Wilson among wide receivers in the NFL. So that's where Terry McLaurin lands, and I think it's in the right spot. Why did it take this long to get all that done?
Yeah, I don't know. If anything, I thought, you named those receivers. I thought, if anything, that's a little rich considering his age. Metcalf to me was the comp. They were the same draft class, but Metcalf's 2 years younger. And frankly, the Steelers might have given Metcalf more than he should have, to be honest with you. But I'm sure 5 people will pass him in the next year anyway, so it's just because you're the most recent, you're going to be high on the list. I don't even care that much about the money. I mean, yes, they're a very old team, quarterback aside, but they're in it to win it. And the quarterback is not out of the woods of being a star yet. As great as Daniels was, you can't just be like, we'll just throw a bunch of 2s and 3 receivers out there and you can elevate them. When you're not paying the quarterback, you have to have the star power around him. And McLaurin's been a stalwart of the organization. He's coming off probably his best season. The question I can't answer is the one you threw out there is, why did it take so long?
Was Metcalf's extension 3 years? Or was it longer? So, yeah. Because that kind of makes up for what was it?
I think it's 3.
3, okay. Some of the contracts longer. You're an older player. If somebody else signs a 5-year, you sign a 3-year. Well, you're signed through the same age anyway. So maybe that was part of it. Is the length and how many. It's a 3-year contract. Let's be honest. It becomes a 2-year contract pretty easy if a team wants to get out of it. So I think the per year can go up a little bit. It's a shorter deal and probably works out for both sides. It's probably where they were at. Length the contract and how many guarantees were in that. And as we get more information on it, we'll be able to talk more about that. But getting Terry McLaurin pretty important for that team. And you hope you hope he's not in too late to ramp up and get ready to go, which is why things are getting in the nitty gritty here for some of these players, because you see this happen a lot where guys aren't quite themselves to start the season after an extended camp and preseason holdout because they haven't had the opportunity to ramp up and be ready to play. And then what happens? We saw this with Brandon Ayuk last year.
I was going to bring up Ayuk to you if you thought that was part of it.
I think that certainly I don't see how you could watch that situation and think that the offseason holdout wasn't part of why it didn't click right away for him on the field once he was signed, and potentially led to injury, devastating injury for Brandon Ayuk. Still not back, probably going to miss 6 more weeks of this season. You don't want to see that happen for Terry McLaurin. You don't want to see it happen for any of these star players who aren't with their current teams or might get traded to new teams.
Yeah, and who knows if it will or not. I mean, I don't want to scare off Washington fans, but it would have been better if he was out there running more routes with Daniels and maybe taking a hit or even getting in a preseason game or whatever. But I do think it's really good for the locker room and the overall energy of the organization. And, it's something that had to get done. And if this went much longer, I think it would have really loomed,
Howie Roseman, as he does, swinging trades. So a big NFC East news segment here at the top of this show before we talk fantasy quarterback rankings, courtesy of Mr. Matt Williamson. Before this season starts and before everyone's Labor Day fantasy football drafts, I'm traveling to fantasy football draft, doing the live in-person draft, which is, it's the only way. If you can get a live draft, that is the way to go. So I'll be having one of those.
That's what I'll be doing Labor Day weekend. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. It's like, fam maybe wants to take a vacation. It's like, look, we can work around some vacation for a day, but I'm going to do a live draft on Labor Day weekend. Let's get this season going. So that's usually what ends my summer. So let's talk Philadelphia Eagles. They have made a trade and they bringing in another quarterback. Seems every year they bring in a quarterback via trade or send somebody out via trade or both. Sam Howell now is on his way to the Philadelphia Eagles from the Minnesota Vikings. Really interesting on both sides of this for the Eagles and the Vikings. For the Philadelphia Eagles, Tanner McKee's injury is really what this is all about, needing someone who can come in and potentially be one play away from needing to step on the football field.
Yeah, so let's talk about both teams here because it's not a massive deal, but Howell's a brand name guy that started early, and I also think it reflects a little bit on his career that the league – it does not look at him as any kind of potential as a starter anymore. Like you're going to be the Ryan Fitzpatrick journeyman, probably on 10 teams in 12 years guy. You know what I mean?
And teams like him enough to be like, well, this guy can at least come in and help us and be somebody who could play if needed, but we don't want him to be QB1. So he might have a long career of holding clipboards, which is a nice job to have.
Oh, yeah. That being said, I do think because it's the Eagles and they churn the bottom of their roster and make more trades than anybody in the league, especially at the quarterback position, as you mentioned, that maybe they see something in him. Like it sounds like DTR is on his way out. McKee is injured. They probably thought the same thing with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Yeah, hey, we've seen glimpses of this guy. We're going to get our hands on him. Okay, it didn't work out. They played against Howe, in Washington, probably liked a few of his traits. He's a good athlete. He's aggressive. Maybe we get our hands on him. We can turn him into more. I'm really high on McKee, but he's going to be out for a little bit. But they're always going to be after the next guy. And frankly, that goes back to Carson Wentz when they traded or when they drafted Hurts, who coincidentally now fills in the role for Sam Howell in Minnesota.
Yeah, and I think it's even more interesting in Minnesota what they're doing here. Yeah, speaking of former Eagle, Carson Wentz has been signed by the Minnesota Vikings. But one of the reasons the Vikings felt like they could trade Sam Howell is because they liked Max Brosmer, the local kid, right? Played his college ball in Minnesota. And they like him enough, but then they realized, well, we can't go into a season with two quarterbacks who have never thrown an NFL pass before in a regular season game, right? Because J.J. McCarthy is a first-year starter now, and then you have his backup being Max Brosmer, who's an undrafted rookie quarterback. You can't – undrafted or seventh-round pick? He was undrafted, right?
I think he was undrafted, yeah.
It was a nice year for quarterbacks. Max Brosmer was the guy that usually gets drafted. Like, he was a nice prospect, I think, at quarterback. But – so they had to have a veteran player who's played an NFL football game before. So that's where Carson Wentz comes in and adds that to the equation. And they probably long-term felt like, well, look, we like Brosmer more than Howell, so we can trade him and then we can just bring in a guy just to make sure we have a veteran. And now you got your 3 QBs and hopefully nobody else sees the field other than J.J. McCarthy for the Minnesota Vikings this year.
Yep. And part of me, I don't want anybody to get hurt, and I hope nobody does see the field besides J.J. McCarthy. But I would be curious what that coaching staff, that situation could get out of Wentz once he gets comfortable. We wrote Darnold off at the same point last year. I'd be curious with them getting their hands on him, what they could get out of the guy.
We just talked about how the league feels about Howell. You could probably say the exact same thing about Carson Wentz at this point.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
Nobody really wants him around for too long for whatever reason. So there's something to that, I think, at this point. But clearly,
I think he gets the impression that he isn't that guy, though. That he comes in like he's the man. Well, maybe he's been knocked down a little bit.
We'll see. We'll see. But it feels like the Eagles and the Vikings, like where they're at with their quarterback situation, heading into the 2025 NFL season. Let's talk quarterbacks. How does Matt Williamson see these quarterback situations? Matt Williamson's final preseason fantasy quarterback rankings for 2025. Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is sponsored by Rugiet. I'm sure you all have heard of Viagra, Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills, it can take hours. Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast. On average, in 15 minutes, effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. You can read all the real customer reviews on their site at rugiet.com. And by the way, rugiet.com/lockedonnfl. Get a little special offer. More on that in a second. It's helping people feel more confident and present in the moment. So head to rugiet.com/lockedonnfl and use our code at checkout lockedonnfl to get 15% off today. That's rugiet.com/lockedonnfl, RUGIET. Rugiet and our code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compound drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. It's getting close to a brand new holiday, Matt. That is FanDuel Futures Day, August 26th, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches for just 24 hours. FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. So you got that dark horse MVP. You want to bet on your team to win the Super Bowl? Tons of futures, tons of weekly lines already ready to go for the 2025 season at FanDuel.com and on the app. So parlay your division winner dark horses. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only, August 26th. FanDuel, play your game. Take it away, Matt. We are going to let my co-host shine here this week, because we're going to talk a lot about fantasy football rankings heading into 2025. How do you draft them? How do you see them at the top? And we'll get into some sleepers as well at quarterback for Williamson's fantasy rankings. Quarterbacks today. Where we at the top?
So generally speaking, I'm kind of a late round quarterback guy. Wait and be one of the last dudes or the last dude in your draft to do it. But I do think the top 4 really give you an advantage this year because they're so safe. And really, there's a top 4. And then I think Burrow at 5 sits alone. Then I think it starts to get a little foggy and there's a drop off too. And those top 4 for me in order are Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts. And if you mix those up, I wouldn't fight you. I mean, I think they're all on the same tier. The tush-push thing still being around almost guarantees Hurts 8 to 12 touchdowns. What do you think? Rushing?
Yeah.
And I do think they're going to throw the ball a little bit more, but he is 4th for me. Daniels, I think, is going to be in a lot of shootouts and basically prove to me that he's a massive fantasy asset. But Allen's 1 just because there's really no one I can remember in the history of the game that produces touchdowns like this guy. You know, I mean, air by land or by sea or whatever. You know, I mean, he just gets in the end zone. You know,
he's the entire offense. It's all built around him, and it's no coincidence that all of those top quarterbacks, they can all get it done with their legs and put the ball in the end zone themselves as well as throw it. That's
why Burrow's not in that group, right?
Right. Or Patrick Mahomes.
He's my 6th, but I think there's a drop off there. I mean, that's kind of a leap of faith on a great player because he has not performed like a top half of, a top 5-6 fantasy quarterback lately.
I was just looking to see if I had the asset here to put it on the screen. I don't have it anymore, but we displayed it on YouTube and talked about it a couple of weeks ago. And it was a graph showing the yards per attempt every season for Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, yeah.
He was a big play hunter and how that looked at the beginning of his career, and just every year consistently going down. Kind of stabilized last year for the last 2 years as far as yards per attempt goes. And the way teams are playing against Patrick Mahomes, and he's taken that free candy that teams are giving them underneath, an aging tight end there on the offense, and they haven't really replaced the big playability from Tyreek Hill, even though they've added a ton of speed. Sky Moore traded out of town. He didn't end up being the guy for them. And it's funny because teams play Josh Allen a similar way, but the fantasy production hasn't gone that way for Allen where it has for Patrick Mahomes, which is interesting. Maybe that's just, look, he's winning a lot of football games, but we're talking fantasy. He's not going to put the ball in the end zone as often with his legs as the other quarterbacks at the top. I do think there could be more there, and I kind of like the Patrick Mahomes area. He's got such a big name. It's hard for him to drop too far in drafts, but if he does, he's one of the first quarterbacks where I'd be interested in snatching him up just because I think there's still that ceiling for him and a very, very, very high floor.
Yes. I mean, he doesn't run as much in the regular season as people might think because everyone watches every playoff game and he runs like crazy then, and he kind of saves it and he's super smart about it, But
Right.
At the end of the year, he doesn't have that many rushing touchdowns or that many rushing yards, generally speaking. That being said, Sando tiers, top 100, MVPs, that he's feeling a little bit of heat from Allen and Lamar of who's the best guy in the league. For a while there, it was, it's obviously Mahomes. He goes to the Super Bowl every year. He's unbelievable. He might be the best ever. But just this past year, pundits, including myself, have started to say that gap is really, really small now. And where I'm going with this is he might throw 50 touchdowns and be the MVP.
Right. Yeah. That's still in him potentially for him to go, oh, yeah. Remind everybody. He might feel that and be like, you know what? It's time to remind everybody who's the top guy out there. And you mentioned him 6. So Burrow 5 for you.
I just think they throw a ton.
You look at your team, it's like it's going to be all him. It's going to be all him in the passing game. Throw the heck out of it.
I mean, he threw a ton of touchdowns last year. When they get down near the stripe, it's always Higgins or Chase, and he's the whole offense. And he does run a little bit. I mean, he might get you 300 yards rushing.
So you have that top tier of the 4 guys that can put the ball in the end zone often with their legs as well as their arm. And then it's Burrow 5. It is Patrick Mahomes 6. Where's those next tiers there?
So just I think the top 4 I'm willing to spend on. They usually go like in the second round though at drafts. They're going pretty early, like second, third turn. And then you could convince me to take Burrow not far after, and then you can convince me to take Mahomes not far after him. But now I'm looking at quarterbacks that I don't know if they're great at the game, but they're way better fantasy assets. And this is when I start to really wait until quarterback 12, 13. Like I'm probably not investing in these next 5. And I probably put these next 5 in the same tier as not probably on Team Williamson, but they're going to be starters in almost every fantasy league. And they're good players, don't get me wrong. Actually, one of them doesn't. I'll talk about in a second. But Justin Fields is next, who might not even be the Jet starter next year. But his rushing totals are crazy. And even with the Steelers this past year, he was like fantasy quarterback 6, and he didn't even run that much. It's just such a cheat code. Kyler Murray's a really good combination of running and passing, but not as much as you think. Drake May's the one I have stuck my flag in, though. I have him at 9. Most people have him at 14, 15. I think he's set up for a huge year where Fields, Murray, Nix at 10, Mayfield at 11 are all going in this neighborhood. May is not. That's my personal list, and I hope my teammates or my fantasy league mates aren't listening.
Feels like the bizarro Mahomes because you have them 6 and 7, and one guy is the better real quarterback, and one guy is just a cheat code because of how good a runner he is as a fantasy quarterback. So that's just Drake May. Does he have enough weapons? Is my biggest question.
Well, one thing about May I found really interesting is you know how they decipher quarterback runs versus quarterback scrambles, like with it, that almost all of his runs last year were on scrambles. They did not call any quarterback runs for him. Where Josh McDaniels, who had Cam Newton, I'm sure is going to design some. It's not just run around to make a play. So I think his rushing could be really, really high. I don't love his weapons, though. I mean, I think that's a very legit argument.
Next, let's get into the little bit deep sleepers. Who are the quarterbacks that Matt Williamson is targeting if he's waiting? And most of the names we've talked about are not still on the board in his fantasy drafts here as we approach Labor Day. And let's hope his league mates aren't listening. Next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is sponsored by Yahoo Fantasy. We're talking fantasy here. If you're getting the itch and you're not in a league yet, go to yahoofantasy.com/lockedon to get involved because the NFL season right around the corner, getting close to Labor Day. Preseason games are in the books. Next week, the season starts. So you got about a week to get this thing going. And fantasy football season is here. Everyone's researching, drafting, building their championship squad. So if you haven't joined a league yet, now's the time. And it's all happening on Yahoo Fantasy this year. I'm playing Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran like Matt and myself, creating your millionth league. With the season kickoff September 4th, now's the time to start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football, which offers so many fun ways to compete. You might want more ways to play? Try the brand new Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League. I talked about my live draft coming up this weekend. We just did our guillotine draft for the first time this past weekend, too. I tried to pull some people off my scent by the way I drafted. I got some insight into how to play those guillotine leagues, by the way. We'll talk a little bit about this week. Want to play instantly with friends? Try new Draft with Friends mode. You want the classics? You can bring the crew together for head-to-head private leagues. No crew? No problem. Join a public league right now, the easiest way to play. NFL season kicks off September 4th. So do not wait. Start your league now. Draft at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. That's yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. So when we did our podcast with Thor last week and talking about some rookie fantasy assets and who to draft, wide receivers, running backs, off the air, he gave me some really nice information that I'd like to relay about how to play these guillotine leagues. If you haven't played,
okay.
We'll get into that at some point. We have time this week. Sleeper quarterbacks, where are we at here? The top 10 to 12 guys are off the board. Who do you like? Who are you targeting there if you're a wait on quarterback guy or if you're trying to find that perfect quarterback two for your fantasy league?
Yeah, this is a neighborhood I've been shopping in most when I just run mocks and things like that. Jordan Love at 12. Thor's guy, J.J. McCarthy at 13. I think he's a tremendous athlete and is going to run a lot. And I really just trust the system. We kind of talked about that with Wentz and what Darnold produced last year. But this whole group is kind of lumped together. Dak Prescott at 14, who I don't think runs hardly at all anymore, but they could throw a million touchdowns too. I mean, I think Pickens has, when we talk wide receivers, I think Pickens has a big year. Lamb's set up huge. I don't think Dallas is going to run the ball very much at all. Purdy, right there in this conversation as well. I wish the weapons were a little healthier. I wish there was a little bit better vibes, but I think he's going to be a consistent touchdown producer.
Yeah, a couple of notes real quick on those guys. I actually ended up in my guillotine draft this weekend with Dak, and it was in that range where even a couple of teams had already drafted their second quarterback, and Dak is still there. And if you talk about Joe Burrow at 5, how much difference is there really between Burrow and Dak if he's the 12th, 13th, 14th quarterback available in your league?
I almost said the exact same thing. Like Burrow's a little bit better player, or noticeably better player, and runs a little bit more. But they both could be first and second in the league in pass attempts and touchdowns.
Right. Exactly. And I don't think Purdy, you can envision that. So the ceiling, good quarterback, love the way he runs around and efficient quarterback. But as far as just volume in the Kyle Shanahan's offense, it's a little bit, you're not going to see that Matt Ryan, Julio Jones type of season, probably at least this year from Brock Purdy. So the ceiling, I'm going to go Dak over Brock in that neighborhood.
Would you go Dak over McCarthy? I keep moving Dak up more and more and more. I just think he's going to throw it.
Just because there's so much unknown with J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah.
J.J. McCarthy's the perfect QB2, but are you already drafting 2 quarterbacks by then? If I have to draft one, it's definitely going to be Dak out of those.
That makes sense. I totally get that.
And I would still take Dak over Drake May. There's just too many unknowns.
No, understood. May's my crush,
Yeah. You've liked May for a long time, so I know you're not jumping off that bandwagon anytime soon.
No, I'm not. Then you get into like Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence, like reclamation projects that were first overall picks that have a ton of ability, but have great weapons around them, and sure looks like they have the right, coaches and coordinators around them. So that's a bit of a leap of faith too.
Any league winners, some secret players that maybe aren't even getting drafted in a lot of leagues that all of a sudden show up and it's like, oh my God, this guy is a fantasy nightmare to play against.
So maybe, then I get into like Herbert and Stroud and Goff and Tua, who are really good players, but they're not great for fantasy. But then that next group might be exactly what you said, and that's Bryce Young. So if you look at like the last 6 weeks of the season last year with Young, he ran a lot more than you think, and his fantasy numbers are really good. Cam Ward, like I'm not saying Cam Ward's going to be Daniels this year, but I feel like at 23, I'm not giving him enough credit as just an athlete playmaker, always going to be losing. And then Penix at 24. They're going to throw the ball a ton. He's super aggressive. One of those three could hit big.
Caleb Williams is an interesting one for me because
yeah.
If Jared Goff can be a rosterable fantasy asset, well, Caleb Williams is as talented, if not more talented, and the weapons they've got there. I mean, this could be a huge season for Caleb Williams. He looks bought in. I love the way they looked in that second preseason game, and tons of weapons, catch and run guys, touchdowns, and he's got more legs than someone like Jared Goff. If you're looking at Ben Johnson's offense from Detroit, so
yeah, I hear you. I've moved him around a million times.
Yeah,
and most people have him higher than 16, where I have him.
And so all the guys you're mentioning there, the Penixes and I got to take a swing at one of those guys as a QB2 just to see, because any number of those guys could absolutely break out.
I think all those guys are a better bet for your QB2 than Geno or Matthew Stafford or Aaron Rodgers, or like that's not what you do with your quarterback too.
Stafford's an interesting one because he went undrafted in that draft I just recently had, and I actually picked him up immediately because someone I had was hurt, and so I did the IR swap, and I was like, I didn't have a second quarterback, so I got Stafford and Dak. And I would probably put Stafford again in that same group. You talk about Burrow, talk about Dak, and he's not going to run around and put the ball in the end zone with his legs. But man, would you be shocked if his back holds up? He's back practicing again. You add Devontae Adams to that. We know how aggressive Stafford is, throwing the ball to the outside to his wide receivers.
He could throw a ton of touchdowns.
Yeah, so that could also turn out well. And again, it's a free QB too. It's the perfect reason why you wait on quarterbacks in your draft.
That's what I was going to say. Is you can wait on quarterbacks like crazy, or even pick one up in week 2, and there'll be somebody on the waiver wire. The last guy I definitely want to bring up, though, and you can't draft them right now, but the second Anthony Richardson gets named a starter, he almost becomes Justin Fields, who's like 7 on my list. Now you can't draft him, but if he plays, he produces so much.
Yeah, put him on that waiver priority list if Daniel Jones gets hurt.
Yeah, or even if Jones has a terrible week 1 and 2, and like you get ahead of your league and maybe pick him up.
Yeah, maybe he's on the injury report, but he's not out.
Mm-hmm.
You got a space on your roster.
Yeah. The Colts start 0-3, and it's like the rumblings are coming. Because him and Fields might not be good at football, but they are good at fantasy.
So one of the things that I learned from Thor, who is now a veteran, these guillotine leagues. I'll drop this knowledge on our listeners really quick here, and it makes perfect sense.
I'm super interested
doing a guillotine league because it's not as popular of a format, and it's the first time I've ever done a guillotine league. One is weight on quarterbacks, even more than other standard leagues, because it's the deepest position. And what happens in a guillotine league is all these teams leave, and all their players hit the free agent pool. So if you end up past week 4, you're going to have an option of an awesome quarterback to add to your roster, and that's only going to grow as the season goes along.
That makes sense,
right? And so by the time you get into the end of the back half of your guillotine league, everyone's got one of the top 8 quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, right. I mean, the Allen team could have got knocked off right away and whatever,
And on that same note, you got to think about the talent pool and what happens in these leagues. So what you really need to not do is be bad early. So draft for the first 2, 3, 4 weeks of the season, and then you can supplement your roster after that. But you need to be good early because you don't want to get knocked out early, obviously. So
like
those are the
Rashee Rice is a perfect example. Like
Right.
he might get suspended in week 4, but so what? I'm still alive,
Yeah, exactly. So
or healthy running backs, give me guys that are going to be ready to. Don't give me Mixon and those right.
And if you can save those dollars, because then you can really push people around, because usually it's auction, free agency, a fab budget in free agency. Save that money, and if you have more money than your league mates in the second half of the season, you can push them around. You can guarantee you're going to get the best guys on those other rosters of teams that are leaving the league. So there you go.
I didn't quite understand how free agency worked. I didn't know if like the worst team got to pick the best player, or
yeah, it's usually fab budgets, so you can spend what you spend. And if you save budget and you don't go out early, you can really build yourself a powerhouse for the stretch run.
Wow. Okay. I haven't given much thought. I need to try to get in one.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a new format, new way to think about it, new way to look at things. And if you go out early, you don't have to worry about it anymore, right? So
right. You'll play daily or whatever.
Right? Anyway, so have fun in your fantasy drafts. We'll talk more of Williamson's fantasy rankings here as we approach Labor Day and the 2025 season. Make sure you're tuned in on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcast. Matt and I back tomorrow, right here, Peacock and Williamson.